Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHS.com. This is our 6-year anniversary. How freaking cool is that? Thanks to Henry for putting up with me all the time. And this closer. Is it on?
Yeah.
I think so.
Number 2.
Yeah, it's on.
They can't hear you.
And y'all can't hear me either? All right. Technical difficulties. But it's on. Yeah? Look at there. Do I go or no? Okay. Hold on, guys. We're unable to broadcast for some reason. It's on, yeah? We're supposed to be?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Turn on number 3.
Okay.
It's down low.
Okay. Got it. All right. At least this time it wasn't my fault. Usually it's my fault when something happens. So I think we're going to go with it. So Henry, let me know what I need to do, if there's something that I need to do. Anyway, so 6 years. Hard to believe. It's amazing to me. But thank you to Henry for allowing me to come in and hang out in his studio every week, and for all of you for hanging out with me and sending your questions and your comments and all the fun stuff. When I first started this, it was Henry and my friend Lowell who had a show on here, who I came on with first, and they said, you should have a show, and I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. And here we are 6 years later. So anyway, super fun stuff. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas, a beautiful Christmas, a happy New Year. This is going to be a good year. I'm super excited about this year and all of the fun things to come. So we're going to jump in. Our guest that we were supposed to have today was not able to. Life happens, and that's the way it goes. So we're going to continue talking about the stuff that I love to talk about, which is epigenetics. Over the last, I've been, the genetics and the epigenetics I have loved, since grad school. Well, since undergrad, right? I discovered, genetics, and it was so hard for me. But I discovered it and completely fell in love with it, and took all of the heredity classes that I could take, and just really enjoyed it. And what's funny is I had no idea that it would come back to me. And I think that that's what I love so much about it, is I discovered it, it kind of went away, and then it's like it just was meant to be. It's just fallen in my lap, and it's obviously I take it much, much deeper now than I did when I was in undergrad. But there's such this new understanding. I would say, so when I was in, I'm going to date myself, when I was in undergrad, I think that we probably, I don't know, I don't even think we had mapped the human genome entirely yet, which means we certainly didn't know anything about epigenetics. And so how crazy is that? The change in just a lot of years, but relatively speaking, it's just a few years, is fascinating and amazing. Because here's what's the most amazing thing. I don't know, there are multiple amazing things about epigenetics, but what it means in so many cases is that we have the power. We have the power in our health. We have the power in our future. We have the power to make the choices and the decisions that are going to create health or create dysfunction. And it's just the way that it is. Now, it's not that we all are perfect. I'm certainly not perfect, right? But as long as I am making decisions based on knowledge that I have about my body, not anybody else's body, but about my body, I can make the decisions sometimes that are not going to be the best decision, right? So I had a key lime pie back last week or over the weekend. So it's a really perfect example for me. And so I didn't, it's been, a lot of years of me learning and understanding my body. But um, for me with dairy, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to get snotty and congested. Gluten, I'm going to get pimples, and then sugar just goes to my ass, right? So I know all of these things are going to happen, but it's so rare that I do it that when I do it, I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to love on it. And then if I get a pimple, I'm going to cover it up. And if I get snotty, it's just going to last a few days. And that's the way that it goes, right? And so what's important to keep in mind though is when we know we have sensitivities like that, it's not just the outward expression. There are other things going on inside the body as well. So, if we know that there's an inflammatory response, which is what all of that is an inflammatory response, we want to try to make the decisions that are going to mitigate that inflammatory response, because we don't want to have this chronic underlying, low-grade inflammation, because it's just going to cause stress. Stress pisses the body off, and then things go haywire. And that's what happens so often. I have clients who come in and they've just sort of spiraled, right? And that's no fun for anyone. And then we've got to start unwinding it. So we don't want to have to get to the point to where we're unwinding, right? So the awareness and the education of our body, the knowledge of our body is really key. And that's where genetics comes in, because what we find and what we see all the time is that someone does a diet, right? Which I hate the word diet. It's not a good word. But anyway, it's really a lifestyle. But someone does a particular diet. Say it's keto or it's paleo or it's low FODMAP, you name it, right? And they're like, it's not working for me. Why is it working for my husband, my friend, my whomever, but it's not working for me? It's because you're different, right? We're so different in so many ways. Some of us are purebred and some of us are mutts. And so we've got to, once we start looking at our genetics, we have the ability then to look at, okay, how do you process fats and lipids? How do you handle carbohydrates in the evening? How do you work out, right? What is your injury potential? And that's the thing to understand too, is your epigenome is your potential, right? So let's dig in a little bit to what that actually means when we're talking about genetics and epigenetics. And so, that's better. So, genetics, like I said, we mapped it back, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. And there was the thought that, okay, this is who we are. There's no getting out of it, right? So if my family history is a heart attack or stroke, then that's going to be me. Then we start to discover the epigenome. So the epigenome, there are locations that live on top of genes, and they are what control gene expression. So what controls our epigenome? It's everything that we do every single day. This is the beautiful thing about epigenetics, because the power is in my hands, right? I have the control, in large part, I have the control to manage what I'm putting in my body, what I'm putting on my skin, what's in my environment, how I handle my relationships, how I handle negative thoughts, how I handle stress. Now, there are things that we can't necessarily have control over. Like, I can't control the air in this, outside, right? Unfortunately, I can't, but I can control the air that's in my house to a degree. I can't control, maybe if I had childhood trauma, I can't control generational trauma, right? But I can learn to control how to manage it. And so it's not always easy, right? We have to sometimes, a lot of times, I do, find people outside of ourselves who can help guide us in understanding how we start to handle these things. But the decisions we make, the food we eat, the movement that we make every day, the lack of the lack of nutrients or the excessive nutrients, macronutrients, these are all things that are going to impact our epigenome. And then that's how our genes express. So going back to something like cardiovascular disease, I have in my family, I've got cardiovascular disease and diabetes and cancer and autoimmune disease and probably all kinds of other things, right? But those are the biggies. I mean, it's just all over the place. And so Does that mean that that's going to happen to me? With the way that I am, it's unlikely. Things can happen, right? Like I said, I can't control everything, but I manage what I eat, I manage what I put on my body and in my body. I run my labs, I look at my genetics, right? And I understand my genetics. I'm still digging deep into my own genetics, and this is what I do for all my clients as well. But the deeper you can dig, the more that you can understand. And so I continue to dig and learn and understand, and then I take all of the data and I continue to layer it in, so I have a deeper and deeper understanding. And it's I enjoy it. Not everybody enjoys that stuff, but that's why I do it. I mean, that's why I do it for my clients, so they can learn what their body needs, how to partner with their bodies, and how to take the information that I give them, because I do the research, and then they have a huge toolbox and they understand what their body needs. At least for the most part, things change and the body's super dynamic. It's always going to change. But the information that they get and the work that we do together and the time that we spend together is stuff that they can take with them for a lifetime. And it's stuff that potentially they can pass on to their kids and all of grandkids and that kind of thing. So the thing that we need to make sure that we are taking to heart is that our epigenome is our potential, right? I mean, I think it's a really, really important one to understand. And so if we look at labs, labs kill me. Conventional labs, and I run them all the time, but I look at them from a functional perspective. But if we're looking at labs and we look at typical lab ranges, they're not optimal lab ranges, and they're different for, everybody's a little bit different. And somebody who does CrossFit versus somebody who sits on the couch, the labs are going to look different. And you may look at them and you go, oh, my AST and ALT is elevated, and I do CrossFit. What's going on? Now those are liver enzymes. Is there a problem going on? What's happening? Well, when you work out hard, sometimes it's going to push those liver enzymes. It's not that it's a bad thing, but we have to understand the nuances when it comes to running labs, and when it comes to putting the data together, and when it comes to our genetics, right? So let's see. Let's talk about some of the, again, going back to these basics of genetics. And so if we look at, when I talk about epigenetics, we're talking about variants. We're talking about what's called single nucleotide polymorphisms. And those, or you can call them SNPs or variants. I call them variants because it's a lot easier, But these are the things that influence how your body's detoxing, how you're metabolizing, how you're producing hormones, how you're clearing hormones, how you're clearing inflammation, how you're managing inflammation. I mean, it's all of the things. There are millions of these things going on day in and day out, and it's happening day in and day out. And there's the, well, and I say day in, day out, it's like minute in and minute out, right? It's constant. It's how we live. It's super cool stuff. But if you want to, I mean, many of you by this time have probably heard of MTHFR. MTHFR is a SNP that impacts folate, and there are, I'm not going to get into the details of it, this is not the time for it, this is more of an overview, but it can impact fertility, it can impact detoxification, it can impact inflammation, and all kinds of stuff, right? So it's not that it's bad, and this is what we need to understand too, because I've had many people come to me going, oh man, I got the MTHFR. Okay, everybody has some form of MTHFR, right? But there are different ones that we want to look at, and having the understanding is what allows us then to manage it and to work with it, because that's, again, going back to partnering with our body. We want to work with our body and what we've been giving. There are no mistakes, right? This isn't a mistake. It is understanding so you can give it what it needs, right? Because your body is here to protect you and give you what you need so you can live and survive and thrive, right? So let's see. I don't think I need to get into that too much. So let's see, we already talked about, okay, so we'll jump in here. to epigenetics and the MTHFR. I have a note here just on the MTHFR variants that can lead to low folate, which is then what increases risk for fertility, anxiety, depression, neural tube defects, cardiovascular issues, so forth. So deficiencies in folate, B12, B6, zinc, magnesium, they can bring on epigenetic instability. But so can many other things, right? All nutrients. So these are methylated, and they play a role in methylation, which also is a part and controls gene expression. So these are a big deal. And so when we talk about being deficient in folate or B12 or magnesium or trimethylglycine, right? These are super important, but everything's important, right? We don't want to be deficient because they all impact functions that we need to it's not to survive, right? We've got so many redundancies in the body, but we want to be our best. We want to feel our best. If we don't feel our best, we can't do our best. And so that's what all of this is about. And so many of us are deficient in folate, and is it due to the way that we eat, or is it due to these genetic variants or epigenetic variants that we have? And if we don't know, then we can't manage it. So, it's been really fun. I've done genetic testing and epigenetic testing for a long time, but it's just, I just get deeper and deeper into it, and it's just so much fun. So there's another one. Let's see. Let's talk about diet connections. And this is one that's really close to my heart because I have kind of a unique variant that is, again, going back to there are no mistakes. It's the oldest variant of its type. It's an APO, it's called ApoE, it's apolipoprotein E, and it impacts fat metabolism and cognitive health. And it's interesting because if I didn't know, so let's see, I'm gonna be succinct in what I'm saying here. I have going through school again, nutrition school. What I learned is saturated fat's not bad, and it's not. And I will preach that day in and day out. Saturated fat's not bad. Now, it depends on the type of saturated fat, right? If you're getting your saturated fat from an inflamed, unhealthy, conventionally raised animal, yeah, it's going to be high in omega-6s. It's going to be unhealthy, and it's not going to be good for you. So you want to limit it or just not eat it, right? It's not good. But saturated fat from grass-fed butter, from grass-fed cow, from pasture-raised pigs, right? This is not an unhealthy fat for most people, right? So my ApoE44 genotype is one that I process lipids and saturated fats very differently. There are other saturated fat SNPs, right? So it's not just sitting in a vacuum. We want to put all of this stuff together. But this one's significant because it can also impact cognitive function significantly. And so if I'm looking at managing my cognitive health, I want to understand what it is that I need to do in my diet, in my lifestyle, in my, do I need to supplement certain things in order to make sure that I am supporting my cognitive health for today and for the rest of my days. If I remember correctly, this genotype is like 2 to 3% of the population. So it's really low. And it's one of those, it's a little, quite honestly, can be a little bit of a burden because in the way that I eat, and I don't have to do this, but I do this because I want my future to be bright and healthy and functioning until the day I'm no longer on this earth, right? You hear the stories, this is just the horror stories with Alzheimer's. It's scary stuff. So the things that I do is I limit my saturated fat. I used to eat a lot of coconut oil. I used to eat a lot of coconut milk. I don't do that anymore. I do very few medium chain triglycerides like the MCT oils, right? Everybody talks about how healthy those are, and I think that they are for most people. I think for me, they have to be super, super limited because they can be more damaging. Also, I can't and shouldn't mix saturated fats with carbohydrates. And so that's an interesting one, right? If we are diabetic, what we're told is to eat your fat with your carbs, or your protein, because it blunts the sugar spikes, which is true. But what if I didn't know about my genotype, um, and didn't understand my risk factors? And so I am eating my fruits and berries and things like that with coconut milk. It can be a huge problem. Or if I'm trying to lose weight and I'm thinking, okay, I've heard that medium chain triglycerides, MCT oil, can support cognitive health, can support ketone production, and can support liver function and can help me lose weight. And I'm loading up on MCT oils, right? And I don't realize that I have a huge risk because of that, because my body doesn't process it well and it can become toxic. Not toxic, inflammatory, right? So these are the things that are, I mean, they seem small, but they're huge. For me, they're huge. And what's fun too is, for me, eating carbohydrates in the evening is not a great idea. But I will do reports on people all the time, and it's like, yeah, you might sleep better if you have a few carbs at night. I mean, it's wild. And so for somebody to come to you or to anyone and say, hey, you do this certain diet and it's going to be the best for you, you can't say it, right? I can't, people ask me how much protein they should have. I can give you a generalization. I do tell people you should have 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per ideal body weight. Ideal is sort of the key there. But some people need more and some people need less. Um, and so it's the same with carbs and it's the same with fat. And so for me to truly know what my clients and patients need, genetic testing is the key. Now we can put a lot of information together without genetic testing, and we can kind of extrapolate what someone might need, but we couldn't extrapolate me and my ApoE genotype for sure. So anyway, I think it's an important one to understand and to know, and I don't see it very often. Which is, I mean, I guess that's why it's 2 to 3% of the population. I've seen it, I don't know, 2 or 3 times probably in my time that I've been practicing. So here's what's interesting too when it comes to this ApoE genotype. So again, going back to the 4-4, or just so you can, I don't need to get into the details of that. Anyway, so for me specifically, so many people, generally speaking, will tell you, just go do a Mediterranean diet. You'll be fine. Just go do a paleo diet. You'll be fine. I wouldn't be fine with that. It wouldn't work well for me. And so I have a higher need for antioxidants. I have a higher need for specific types of exercise. I need low saturated fat. And the comment here is early Alzheimer's risk is higher in E4 carriers only when combined with modern inflammatory lifestyles. So here's the thing that's pretty cool is there's an ancestral connection, and that's what's really fun about this too, is we link in ancestry, and it's not like we're bringing in your ancestors, right? But we're linking in based on your genetics. We're linking in, what your ancestry would be, which is how you would eat. And so the E4 allele is what helped early humans survive infection, but our environment has changed. So it's the oldest. It's been around, I don't know, since the beginning, right? Which is kind of cool. And it has its protective mechanisms. And I think there are some other protective mechanisms. I don't want to get it confused with a couple of other ones that I've been researching, but maybe in fertility and things like that. I'm not entirely sure, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But that's the cool thing about a lot of these genotypes and these alleles that we are researching, is we might think that they're bad or they're detrimental or they're a problem, when really initially they were protective. And so it goes back to, there are no mistakes. We just want to learn how to work with what we have and what we've been given, because we're so beautifully and divinely and amazingly created, and the wisdom that we have in our body, um, it's fascinating. We just got to listen to it, right? Just got to listen to it. Sometimes we just got to get out of our own way. Let's see. So there is, another one that we hear a lot about are omega-3s and just omega-3. So omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, omega-6 is pro-inflammatory, but we need them both. They work together, right? We need a nice balanced ratio of, I'm losing my battery, a nice balanced ratio of omega-3s and omega-6s. So omega-3 essential fatty acids let's back that up. Omega-6 essential fatty acids come in a state, say you cut your finger, right? You cut your finger and you have this inflammatory cascade that comes in, it turns red, it hurts, it's all the things, but you got to have it, right? But then you have to have the anti-inflammatory cascade come in order to squash that fire. So we are told then to eat fish oil, and so eat fish, take fish oil supplements, that kind of thing. What we're also told, though, is that we can eat walnuts, or we can eat chia seeds, or we can eat flax seeds, and we're going to get our omega-3 fatty acids from that. Now, if you have this particular this SNP called FADS1 or FADS2, what that means is you will not, or you're less efficient at converting omega-3 from plant sources to the active form, which is the EPA DHA, which is what we find in fish oil, and there is some algae and that kind of thing, but mostly the fish oil. We also find omega-3s in healthy land animals, so healthy cows, right? Not conventionally raised cows, but healthy cows will have a healthy ratio of omega-3 and omega-6. And so if we're a vegetarian, we don't want to eat fish, or we don't want to eat, healthy cows, and we're eating all these walnuts and chia seeds, and we're going in and we don't realize that we have this particular FAD SNP, what's going to happen? You're not getting your omega-3s. You're probably going to be, your ratio is going to be off. You're going to be too high in omega-6, and you're going to be inflamed. You're going to be like, what's going on? So we can test for omega-3s and omega-6s, which is, I see those ratios off all the time, and we don't know it. And is it because of these SNPs? Maybe, could be. So let's see. Yeah, let's move on. So here's one, this PPAR alpha. So this is ketone production and fat oxidation. This is not one that I know as much about, but it's one that is well studied. So this gene influences how your body breaks down fat and produces ketones. So you have these particular variants. You've got low ketone production, right? So you wonder if you're on a ketogenic diet, if you're not producing ketones on a ketogenic diet, what's happening, right? So you have poor fat metabolism. You're on a ketogenic diet and you've got this SNP and you're eating high fat. Ketogenic diet is like 70 to 90% fat. What's going to happen? How are you going to feel? You're not going to feel good. It's going to suck, right? And so you have poor fat metabolism and potential lipid issues on high fat diets, right? So clients may feel sluggish or worse on keto. Watch for increased triglycerides and LDL, and may do better on moderate fat balanced macro approaches, more like a Nordic or a zone diet. So I think that it's interesting because if I were to take this back to my own ApoE genotype, which I need to look into this. I don't know my my PPAR, but this is how you start learning and understanding how the reporting can put these things together for you. I don't have to do all of this. I mean, I do a lot of it, and then I'll also take it and put it in other report forms, so they're super understandable, right? And we put all the pieces together, at least as many pieces that we have, we're putting them together, especially as I'm creating protocols. But you can see how if I'm an ApoE44 and I also have a PPAR, then that is going to double whammy the fact that if I were to eat a high fat diet, then I'm in a lot of trouble. It would not be good for me, would not be good for my heart, for my cognitive health, for my cardiovascular system. So, yeah, such a big deal. We hit on MTHFR already. I think. Do I want to? Let's see. Let me see if there's anything on here that I missed. So, I think that maybe what we'll say just on this, it is key for detoxification, hormone regulation, neurotransmitter balance, all kinds of stuff, right? There are two common variants, and what we see is we've got the C677T and the 1298C. I have one, I am heterozygous for the 1298C, which is the least impactful form of MTHFR. If you are a homozygous 677T, you are the most impacted by MTHFR, which means methylation, I think it's down by like 70% or something like that. And methylation plays a key role in genetic expression. So if you have low methylation, your genes aren't expressing properly, right? So that can be super impactful. This is why it's so important when it comes to detox and hormones and fertility and neurotransmitters, and why more people have anxiety, and why they might have, depression, or why they're, infertile or losing babies and things like that. So it is a key marker to know. I test it on people pretty regularly. Interestingly, I just did it for a college kiddo, male college kiddo, back a couple of weeks ago, and he came back as homozygous 677T. And so with some of the things that he struggles with, it's like, okay, this might make sense. So we need to start supporting this variant. And so, yeah, so some of the red flags we see with having these variants are miscarriages, depression, anxiety, autoimmunity, histamine intolerance, chronic fatigue. And so they need methylated B vitamins. Now, we need to make sure that, I don't care what your MTHFR status is, you cannot take folic acid. You must take folate. But especially if you have these MTHFR variants, you must take methylated folate. Now, a caveat to that is, so folic acid is synthetic. Folic acid can push anxiety. Folic acid will you'll only get so much of it, and it won't allow for the absorption of natural folate, right? And it can cause problems in fertility. It can cause problems with babies in utero. Stay away from folic acid, no matter where you are in life, right? Just don't do it. It's not worth it. So folate, you want natural folate. Some people, though, still can react and become a little overly anxious with the methylated folate. So, sorry, I just went into B12. Never mind. So, no matter what, methylfolate. Let's forget that I started that one. But anyway, look in your vitamins. Things like pasta. They always have, so frustrating, but they always have folic acid. Bread. So it's important to look at the ingredients of your foods. If they have ingredients, if they're boxed foods, look at what's in them. It's best to avoid boxed foods, right? I don't think I have to say that, but look at what's in them, because they put these synthetic nutrients in there and they can create a lot of problems. Okay. Yeah, so it just says it blocks, folic acid blocks folate receptors. So pretty important stuff. So then there's blood sugar regulation. How many people are struggling with blood sugar regulation, and it's you can't figure out why you can't manage it, right? So you're like, I'm doing all the things, and then you end up on metformin or some dirty drug like that, right? And so this TCF7L2 is one of the strongest gene predictors of type 2 diabetes. So if you know it, you can mitigate it. Just like if you know you have the potential for Alzheimer's, you can mitigate it, right? That's the beauty of all of this stuff. So these variants impair insulin secretion and glucose regulation. You can be more carb sensitive, especially with refined grains, sugars, and high glycemic foods. So if you have this variant, what do we want to do for that? So we want to look at super fiber-rich foods, low glycemic foods, high protein meals, and track your blood sugar, right? So it goes back to super basic stuff. But if you know you have it, then you know, okay, I probably shouldn't eat a banana. Or maybe I should eat a banana and I can eat it with protein. Or maybe I can eat it with fat unless I'm an ApoE genotype, right? Or ApoE4. So they also do really well with intermittent fasting and carb cycling. And it can be helpful for the right people in the right situation, right? Doesn't mean it's always perfect, but it can be helpful for those people. So it's super interesting. So getting into like these ancestral adaptations, and why certain diets work really well for certain people and others don't. You've got geography. So you think about your Alaskans, your Eskimos, right? They are a keto type of genotype, right? They're going to do really well because they survive on whale blubber, and have for however many generations they've been here, a whole lot of them, right? And so, and you think about environment, you think about culture. So when we're looking at understanding a person's ancestry, it can help us to understand the type of diet that they should have. So there are lactase genes, right? And so for most people, we lose that gene as we stop breastfeeding. Now, it doesn't happen with everyone. I'm one of those people, this is an interesting one too, I'm one of those people where I should do well with dairy. I still have the lactase enzyme. But, just like I said earlier, if I eat dairy, but especially like conventional dairy, it's dairy that is dead. So raw dairy is a different story. I still think it's not great for me, but raw dairy is a different story. I don't tend to get as snotty. Butter's fine for me. Typically, ghee is fine for me. But conventional dairy is dead, right? There are no enzymes to it. There are no probiotics to it. There's nothing in the food to tell the body what to do with it. And so we have to have a live food for the body to know what to do with it. So conventional dairy is just dead food. But I should do well with it. But still, there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something that my body is not amazing with it. So I tend to avoid it for the most part. I went to bed, the other night, and I was like super, like I got like stuffy on one side, and I was kind of snorty. I was like, I feel like I had dairy. I was like, oh yeah, I had the key lime pie, which is amazing, totally worth it. So good. Let's see. So Northern Europeans, they could have this lactase gene, right? Let's see. So the Inuit populations, they have an FADS2 deletion. So this shows their dependence on marine fats. Let's see, what else do we have here that we should talk about? I think that's it for that. So there are things that we can do when it comes to, and I say this a lot, but I want to make sure anybody who maybe hasn't heard it, going back to layering in data with doing our genetics is doing the lab testing. So we can't do any of these things in a vacuum. We can't look at SNPs in a vacuum. We can't look at SNPs and assume that the SNPs are expressed, right? So we always have to look at symptoms. And I think it always helps too to look at labs. And I don't mean just like your, simple, comprehensive, funny, right? That's kind of redundant, not redundant. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, they don't work together. The simple, comprehensive panel, right? Comprehensive metabolic panel. So what I see most of the time when clients bring to me their comprehensive metabolic panel is it's not very comprehensive. When I run a comprehensive metabolic panel, it's truly fully it's very comprehensive, and then we add on other panels that we need to add on. So, I'm looking at a full thyroid panel if I run a comprehensive metabolic panel, when most of the time what I see, you get 1 or 2 or 3 thyroid markers, which doesn't give us the whole story. I always want to understand lipids at a deep level. And so on a comprehensive metabolic panel, there is only a small part of lipids run. And so I want to run a full heart cardiovascular health panel. It's not very expensive, but I think it's important for us to know. I ran mine twice in 3 months. I was doing some testing on myself. I was changing some things. I am always my own best guinea pig, right? And so I tested and I did a full panel, and then also my full cardiovascular panel, and then I made some changes to some things, and I did it again to see what changed. Fascinating, because it can change quickly, but I need to know, and I need to keep track of my inflammatory markers, my lipids, all of these things, because I need to make sure, and my B12 and my folate and my methylation, because I know when my methylation's off, which is nuts. This is the cool thing about learning your body, right? So a little bit of a history here, or I guess a story, is there was a time, and I have talked about this before, so if it's repetitive, I apologize, but and it's kind of happening, it's growing back now, but I was losing hair right here at my hairline. Like, I had a receding hairline. It was nuts, and I didn't notice it until I went and got my hair cut. I'm like, what is happening to here? It was just crazy, and I had no idea. But it happened to be at the same time I was looking at I did a hormone panel to understand my hormones, and it showed my methylation was low. So I started working on my methylation, and what happened? My hair started growing back. Like, holy smokes. So over the years, what I've also determined, because I don't always take supplements for my methylation, I tend to pulse my supplements. But if it's too long in between, my methylation drops again. Then I notice it because I notice the hair. Another thing that happens if I have one glass of wine, the next day I'm regretting it, right? And so I don't want it to be that way. And I will also put out there that an ApoE4 genotype should avoid alcohol. I'm not the best, right? Never said I was perfect. But I do want to make the point that I do so many things to protect my cognitive health. I probably should totally give up alcohol. That would be ideal for me, for sure. Point to that is, though, if my methylation is low, I have one glass of wine, then I am in pain with a headache all the next day. I can have that glass of wine if I know my methylation is in line. So I can feel and basically see when, because of my hair, right, see when my methylation is off. And so this awareness is such a beautiful part of me continuously learning how to partner with my body, what my body needs, and how to protect it, and how to support it, and how to ask it questions. And basically, I ask it questions by running labs, or going inward and listening. My word of the year has been listen. It's listening to my body. It's listening to God's guidance for me. It's listening to my clients and my patients better. This last year. It's really good. I love having that front of mind for me, and it's one that will continue to stick with me, as most of my other ones do, but it was a really good one. I wasn't quite ready to give it up. Let's see. Oh, so more on understanding, or for me, I want to continue to make sure that my methylation is at a place that is sufficient, because I want to make sure that my gene expression is functioning properly. Let's see. So, practical nutrition tips for on Gene Insight. So this is a good one. So if we're looking at MTHFR, one of the things that it says is boost leafy greens. You use methylated B12 folate. We talked about that. There are other methylation SNPs, right? And so again, going back to MTHFR does not function in a vacuum. You've got MTR and MTRR, and these whole other host of SNPs. For those of you though who maybe are like me on multiple levels, and so knowing that I know when my methylation is low, also watching your homocysteine. Homocysteine is homocysteine is a big deal, because homocysteine also impacts cognitive function. So what we find in lab ranges, conventional lab ranges, is I think that the high the lab range is like up to, I don't know if it's, I think some labs it's 13, maybe some labs it's 15, something like that. But really, it's not over 7. You start getting over 7, you start pushing the inflammatory response, which can impact cardiovascular health and it can impact cognitive function. So going back to my own story, I want to make sure that my methylation is in line because I want to make sure that I'm protecting my cognitive health because of the ApoE4 genotype. So again, you can start to see how you put all of these things together. So making sure that my homocysteine is sitting at 7. You also don't want it too low. I think that there's not a low range in conventional lab ranges. I think that that's right, and that's a problem because you don't want it below 6 either. So you're looking at a pretty tight range of 6 to 7 there, where if you're looking at your conventional lab ranges, you're going up over 11, as Dr. Bredesen says, who is reversing Alzheimer's disease. Going over 11 is a 100% chance of cognitive decline. We don't want that. So what that's showing us, so homocysteine can be elevated for a few reasons. It can be elevated due to nutrient deficiency, your methylated nutrients, right? So your B12, your folate, your trimethylglycine, magnesium, there are a number of them. But then it can also go up due to oxidative stress. So if you've got a lot going on, or if you have these reactive oxygen species type of SNPs, then oxidative stress goes up and your homocysteine can go up. So you want to check that. Also, creatine plays a role in, which I didn't know this until, I don't know, a few months ago. So if your creatine is not optimal, it can push your homocysteine up. So cool stuff. Creatine also is super important for cognitive health. You're probably seeing more and more, creatine, how long has creatine been around, right? For freaking ever. And of course you want a good source of it, but it is these higher doses that are beneficial for cognitive health. So you can take 5 grams, you can take 10 grams, and it helps with your, it pulls water into the muscle cells, it makes you stronger. I've noticed this in myself, that I took it for a while and then I stopped and then I started again. So I took it for a while, and you can see, you're just more defined. You can see it. I mean, if you've seen me in a tank top, you see that I have some definition in my arms and my shoulders, right? Then I got off of it, and I just had long, lanky arms again. It's the only long, lanky thing on me, my arms. But, and then I started again. I noticed my strength. I noticed the definition come back in my arms. And though, so that 5 grams is what most people will take for muscle and for strength and for definition and that kind of thing. Then 10 grams is what you take for cognitive health. Now they're starting to say that the data is showing it's closer to 20 grams that you take for cognitive health. Now, it's not that you have to be careful with it, but I think that my understanding is it can push some, kind of some GI distress if you take 20 grams all at once. So maybe you split it. There are some liposomal forms that maybe are going to be easier on the GI. But keep that in mind. If you are protecting your brain function and cognitive health, you might want to think about taking 20 grams of creatine a day. I don't always. I'm still mostly taking 10. Sometimes I go up to the 20. So that's something that I need to do more of. It's just a lot, right? I take it in a powder. It's a lot of powder, but I'm not complaining. It's what needs to happen, right? So let's talk about ApoE4. So focus on lean proteins, which I do. I used to eat full fat, and my husband can eat full fat, right? So I would make a pulled pork, right? I love pulled pork. And I would just pull it with all of the fat in it. It made it delicious. What I know now is I need to, if I'm going to eat it, I'm going to drain the fat, and I'm going to take as much fat out of it as I can. Now, I tend to let my husband eat most of it, so I'll leave some of the fat for him. But for me, it really is, it's the lean proteins. It's watching my saturated fat. berries, olive oil. I reduce butter, especially butter, coconut oil. I do aerobic exercise. I do more CrossFit, but we do a lot of the aerobics in there as well, and some interval training. So for the FADS2, we want to look at prioritizing sardines, salmon, algae oil, and reduce inflammatory seed oils. Now we're going to want to reduce inflammatory seed oils in everyone, hands down, right? It doesn't do anybody any good. So if we're looking at this PPAR alpha, we watch lipids on keto, and we consider a Mediterranean or a flexitarian plan, which is, interesting to me. So then we have the TCF7L2. We reduce grains and sugars, eat high protein breakfast, and time carbs around activity. So that's the cool thing too, is if you work out, we can, or you're a professional athlete, or even just a sideline athlete, we can help you to optimize athletic performance based on your genetics, and bringing it all together with food, right? So we can do this with athletes. We can do it if you're chronically ill. We can do it if you're just wanting to optimize. We can do it if you're looking to biohack, right? And that's really what all this is. It's super targeted, really super cool biohacking. It's amazing stuff. I dig it. Let's see. So yeah, so looking at my notes here, and this is true. One of the things is, most of the clients that I work with, they'll say, I've tried everything, right? I had someone come to me, I think it was just yesterday, and she was like, I have tried it all, and I still have, she has these histamine reactions, and she has been on tirzepatide, and as soon as she comes off tirzepatide, she starts putting the weight back on, and I get the tirzepatide, and I think that it has its it has its benefits. It's certainly anti-inflammatory. It's got some really cool data, especially when we're microdosing. If you're doing any of these GLP-1s, tirzepatide is GLP-1 and GLPI. Anyway, I believe to date anyway, it's the better one to use is the tirzepatide. But microdosing it is showing some really cool anti-inflammatory benefits. But we want to do the lowest dose possible. And I don't think it's something that we want to stay on. So if you are trying to get off of it and you're still putting the weight back on, you can't figure out what's going on, there's still some metabolic stuff going on, right? So it is more artificially lowering the inflammation and more artificially lowering the weight loss. But if we don't address what's actually going on, whatever that root cause is, you're going to come off and you're probably going to gain the weight back, which is super frustrating, right? So addressing the underlying cause, no matter what you're doing, no matter what the situation is always got to be the foundation of what we do. So if we're looking at labs, and we always want to look at what is, at least to the best of our ability, the root cause, right? Is genetics the root cause? No. What I look for as root cause is going to be microbes, it's going to be mycotoxins, it's going to be toxins in the environment, it's going to be mental and emotional stress and trauma, it's going to be heavy metals. Those are the things that are in our environment and in our food, and that are going to just block everything up, and those will then turn on the SNPs that we maybe don't necessarily want turned on. So what do we want to do? So we still want to layer in, because we want to understand the best diet for us, the best food for us, how to manage metabolic pathways, how to best support methylation, and all of these things that the genetics can show us. But we have to support the microbiome. We have to build a robust microbiome. We have to bring in good, healthy fiber, so our microbiome is building up our immune system. It's building up our neurotransmitters, right? We have 90% of our serotonin, which is our happy neurotransmitter, that is produced in the gut. If we have an unhealthy microbiome, our serotonin production is not going to be optimal. What's going to happen? You're not going to feel good, and you're not going to be happy. So this is why it's difficult, but it's so much fun when we get all of this data and we have the ability to put it together and layer it in and really create something for you. Like I said, this is what I've been doing for myself. I do it constantly. I'm adding in new data, adding in new data, adding in new data, so I can learn more and more and go deeper. And I don't expect everybody to want to do exactly what I'm doing, but to, you know, to the degree that anybody is willing and wants to, is what I want to do, right? My goal, my ultimate goal, is to bring knowledge. And I think I said this early on, but it's always going to be the truth. I want you to know the truth of your body. I want you to have the knowledge where you can make the decisions based on good information, based on the knowledge of your body, and not the knowledge that somebody's telling you, not the knowledge that some influencer is telling you, right? Not somebody saying this is what you need to do because it's working for everybody, because it's never the case. So having the knowledge based on who you are is how you make good, solid decisions to help you get to wherever your goals are. You know, what is that? So is it optimization? Is it managing an autoimmune condition? Is it reversing an autoimmune condition? Is it reversing heart disease or reversing diabetes? All of these things are lifestyle conditions. 95, 97% of the junk that we deal with are lifestyle conditions. The things that aren't are going to be truly genetic malfunctions, right? So you think, you know, Down syndrome is truly a genetic condition. And we have those, but they are much more rare, right? That's, you know, 2 to 3, 4 to 5% of the conditions that we deal with are true genetic conditions. So what does this do? Is it puts the power in our hands. I have the power every day to make the choice, positive, you know, good, bad, positive, negative, or whatever. It's up to me, which is beautiful. And I say this a lot too, but this is God's gift of free will, right? This is amazing stuff. I am accountable for the decisions that I make and how my body responds, right? I'm accountable to learn and to know and to listen to what it's trying to tell me, so I know how to support it. And if you don't want to do it yourself, find somebody who's going to do it for you, right? We don't have to go as deep as I go for myself. I have a lot of people who want to go super deep because it's super fun, but we can keep it. We can have a lot of information that's basic information, not spending a ton of money, that still can make things very personalized and individualized, and then create protocols off of that. But it gets better and better the more information we have. That's really what it comes down to. So I think we'll probably stop there. I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about our sponsors. So Susan Drake, who is amazing, she is the founder of Mountain Medical Concepts. I know not everyone can see this, especially if you're on, you know, my Facebook or my Instagram. It looks a little bit wonky, but if you're on, you know, the KUHS stations, or if you go to YouTube later on, you'll see, you know, all of Susan's stuff, and then of course, you know, my precision blueprint, but and the QR codes. But so Susan, the one in particular she has is PNOE, which is a VO2 max and metabolic analysis equipment, essentially. And so it's for practitioners, but if you know someone if you have a practitioner who has this in their clinic, do it. It's super cool stuff, right? So there are also SNPs that impact VO2 max. Amazing stuff. And so doing a VO2 max, understanding your metabolic, your metabolism, it helps to age you. It looks at, I mean, you can see here, for those of you who can see it, breath, saliva, stool, body scan, urine, blood. It's looking at all of these things and looking at all of the different organ systems and helping you understand where you are, how your body's managing, what actual age you are, not just in years, but what actual age you are, and then how you can help to optimize your VO2 max. And so then you layer in genetics and look at your VO2 max and your genetics, and that's even better, right? So it goes back, you know, this is ideal for anyone who wants to optimize health. It's ideal for anybody who's struggling and trying to understand what's going on with their body, right? Know that fighting your body is not the answer. Feeling like your body is the enemy is not the answer. The answer is learning to partner and finding out what your body is trying to tell you. So it's that listening that is key to everything that we are and to reaching the goals that we want to reach. So grateful for Susan and all that she does, and for Pnoe and the VO2 Max. Remember, I am doing all of this for clients, but I'm also doing a very sort of a smaller version. And I say it's smaller, it still prints out like the report that I did yesterday was a 29-page report. So I think the first probably 10 or 12 pages was specific to that person. The rest are resources and information to move forward if you want to. But they're big reports that give really detailed information on who you are and what you are. It does not include genetics. That's the stuff that we can start layering in. If someone has labs, we can layer in some labs. But I'm doing this, I was doing a 447, I'm now up to 97, because I want people to have access to good information and good care. And so doing these reports, I can start somebody on the right trajectory with this type of information, and they can take it and do what they want with it, or we can jump in and do more, right? And so it's a ton of fun. It's cool stuff, and it's based on you. It's not based on all kinds of generic stuff. It is literally based on you, where you are, what your sex is, what your body type is, what your glandular type is, what are your hormones doing, what are you eating, what do you not like. I mean, the list goes on. So it's a really quickie intake. So if you want to do it, if you can see it, go to the blueprint, go to the QR code. You can fill all of that stuff out, and we'll chat about it, because it's cool stuff. But if you can't see it, it's going to be linked everywhere, right? I've got the blueprint all over the place, so it's not hard to find. You can go to tastelifenutrition.com. You can go to the Facebook pages and the Instagrams. It's kind of all over the place at this point. So anyway, I think that's where we are. We'll end for today, and I hope if you have questions, if there's anything that you need, anything that I can help with, I hope you'll reach out and let me know. My goal is to be of service. My word of the year this year is light. So if I can help bring light to whatever it is that you're struggling with, then let me know. That's what I want to be able to do. So I hope you all have a wonderful beginning of the year. I hope that we'll see you next week. We'll be here, as always, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Join us. We'll see you later. Bye.